Interesting stuff. Okay, but enough about me. So let's jump into closing skills. We're going to talk about closing skills, which is point 9 on the Mike Ferry sales system, closing skills. I have a list of thoughts written down here. They're not written in any particular order of importance. You decide what's most important to you, but let's go ahead and jump into this. So closing skills. This is probably the most important point here that I'm going to start with at number 1, is that closing is a natural ending to a good presentation. Closing is a natural ending to a good presentation. So here's the thing. I'm sure you've seen books, right, on how to be a good closer, right? You've seen books like that. You've seen videos on how to be a good closer, how to be a great closer, right? We've all seen this. What are great closing words? Well, here's what I want to say to you, and for anyone who ever wrote a book about how to become a great closer, I can sum this up very easily. If you want to be a great closer, become a great presenter. Okay? End of book. All right, that's probably not going to sell a lot of copies, right? But that's really the most important thing when it comes to closing, is if you want to be a great closer, start by being a great presenter, because if you're a great presenter, the closing is easier. Now, be honest, how many of you have ever done a presentation, whether it's a listing presentation, a buyer consultation, whatever, where you just went through the presentation and at the end you said sign the contract and they signed the contract? That happened? Yeah. Okay. All of you. And it was just simply that you followed, you did all the steps, the pre-qual and all those other things. The presentation was great. So at the end, I was like, all right, cool, let's go. You didn't have to come up with any really powerful closing statement. So it's vitally important. The very first thing on closing skills is to become a great closer. You have to become first a great presenter. Otherwise, if you're a subpar presenter and then you have to fight at the closing all the time, well, that's just not as much fun. Okay. Always not as much fun. The next thing I wrote down here is the closing line. Right. So, okay, Robert, I'm reading the books. I'm watching the videos, the great close. What's the closing line that's going to get them to sign the contract? What's it going to be? Well, for those of you that are on the role play or know the scripts, what is the powerful close at the end of the scripts that we practice? I see some of you mouthing it, but if you could
sign the contract.
Would you sign the contract, please?
There it is. That's the big, powerful close that we tend to go with. Big smile. Will you sign the contract, please? Will you sign the contract, please? Okay, chapter 2 is over in the book. So this closing book is really, I'm speed reading through it. I want you to write this down. This is probably this is a statement I came up with that I really believe wholeheartedly and true. Okay, when it comes to closing, because what I've noticed, because I'm joking about the closing books, because I've read the closing books, I've watched the closing videos. Here's what I would say in regards to closing. Okay, you don't have to come up with magic words. You just need to make sense. You don't have to come up with magic words. You just have to make sense. See, sometimes we get so caught up in, oh, I need this powerful close. What's the word? What's the phrase? It's not about that. It's about making sense to the client to where at the very end, they really have no other reason when you say to sign the contract, please, for them to then sign the contract. So don't get caught up too much on the closing skills, whether it's a buyer, a seller, it doesn't matter of, I got to come up with powerful words. Here's the reality. You want to know what the reality is of really powerful words? Most people don't know what they mean. So I've got this really powerful word, and it, whatever that word may be. And then you say it and you expect everyone to just go, oh my gosh, there it is. That's the word. The truth is most people, present company included, don't read the dictionary. So when you have a really powerful closing word, sometimes we go, I don't know what that is. Sounds nice when you said it, but I don't know what it means. You just have to make sense. Okay. I wrote down here next, if you follow the listing presentation verbatim and you are sitting in front of a pre-qualified motivated seller, the close is simple. If you follow the listing presentation verbatim and you are sitting in front of a pre-qualified motivated seller, the close is simple. When you haven't pre-qualified them and you don't know their motivation, the close is very difficult. So therefore, let me ask you this. Let me back up here. When does the closing process really start on a listing presentation? When does the closing process really start on a listing presentation?
Prequal.
The prequal.
Pre-qual.
Yeah, the prequal. That's when your closing process starts. That's when it starts. That's when you can learn their personality style. That's when you can learn their motivation. That's when you can learn what price they're expecting on their home. That's when you know what price they won't go below. That's when you'll start to know what they really like about their house. Are all of those vitally important when it comes to closing a client? Yeah. So the pre-qual is super duper important. I forget who it was. I have the notes somewhere. If you remember who this was, for those of you that I can't remember which retreat it was, but it was one of the retreats. I've been to a few. And one of the agents on stage said, for me, the pre-qual is the listing presentation. The presentation is just me to sign the contract. But that's how important the pre-qual is. So the closing really starts at a pre-qual, because if you don't know their motivation, the closing is really hard. If you don't know their personality style, the closing can be hard. If you don't know what price they're expecting and what price they won't go below, the closing can be really hard. If you don't know if they're planning on potentially selling it themselves, the closing can be hard. The closing starts with the pre-qual. So if you're in front of a pre-qualified motivated seller, the close is simple. When you're not in front of a pre-qualified motivated seller, the close is very difficult. So it's vitally important when you're closing skills to get as much information as possible before you get to the close. Okay. I wrote down here next, when you ask a closing question, don't speak until they do. Now that can be hard sometimes, right? You ask a closing question and then they're thinking about it and you're on edge. Say something. Anything. I don't even care what language it's in. Just say something. Right? Anyone ever heard the term, he who speaks first loses? Right? So when you ask a closing question, like, would you sign the contract, please? Wait. Okay. Does that make sense? So we can get you what you want in the time that you want. Wouldn't that be great? And they're thinking about it. Wait. Who here is expressive? Be honest. There's 45 of you, and I'm the only one raising my hands. You're either not paying attention or you're lying. Okay. For expressives, this is really hard because we want to talk. This is also really hard if you're a driver because you tend to be more impatient. Analyticals and amiables, this is like your time to shine. Ask a question and then be quiet. Because, an analytical, you're like, yeah, I get it. They're taking time to process. An amiable doesn't want to do it because they don't want to interrupt. So drivers and expressives can be hard, but you have to do it. When you ask a closing question, don't speak until they do. Let them go through the process. This is also why it's vitally important to know their personality style, because they might just be an analytical and they're a slow decision maker. They're processing things. I wrote down here next, this is a mindset point on closing skills. Always assume that they're going to sign your contract at the end of your presentation. Always assume they're going to sign your contract at the end of your presentation. If you are going on a listing presentation and your mindset is not that they are going to sign the contract at the end, don't go. Just refer it. I do this with some of you on coaching calls. Well, I think I have a listing presentation. What the hell does that mean? Do you have a listing presentation or do you not? Well, I have a presentation, but I don't know if they're going to sign it. Don't go. Refer it. If I have any agents that would like to refer a listing presentation, would any of you want them? Anybody want those referrals? Melinda wants them. Okay. All right, good. You need the mindset. Closing is as much of a mindset as it is a skill. And if you're not going in with the assumption that they're going to sign the contract at the end of this presentation, don't go. Because you won't have that confidence. You won't push. You won't keep going. They're going to say, we want to think it over. And you're going to say, that makes sense. Okay, well, I'll call you tomorrow. That's not the script, by the way. Since 3 minds are better than 2, let's think out loud together. Tell me, what are you thinking about? But if you don't have that mentality that they're going to sign with me, then you're not going to push. Closing is as much a mindset as it is a skill. Vitally important that you understand that before you try to do anything else. Okay, so always assume. Now, you can make that assumption by following the scripts, nodding and smiling, staying on track, and asking a lot of questions. The 4 key points of a listing presentation. 1, follow the script. 2, nod and smile. 3, stay on track. 4, ask a lot of questions, which is really simple when you're following the script. You do those 4 things, the close is boom, done, over, thank you. Right? But always go in with that mentality. I wrote down here next, being a good closer is more about attitude, enthusiasm, confidence, and belief than it is about using strong words to intimidate the prospect. Being a good closer is more about attitude, enthusiasm, confidence, and belief than it is about using strong words to intimidate the prospect. Your attitude, right? That mentality that you have, your enthusiasm, your excitement, the confidence in what you're saying, the belief that you are the best person to help them throughout this process. Be honest. Any of you ever bought something that you didn't really need, but the salesperson was excited and so you went with it?
Yes.
Anyone? Yes. Yeah, right? I don't really need this, but this person seems really excited and they believe that this is the best product possible. I don't even have carpet, but I bought like 8 bottles of this carpet cleaner. They were just, I don't know. They were just thrilled. You know, you go to a car dealership. Do you want the turbo package? I live in Los Angeles. I can't go past 25 unless I'm going to hit the car in front of me. But the salesperson was so enthralled about the turbo package on this automobile. Of course I want the turbo package. You know what I mean? We're all guilty of it. And so it had nothing to do with intimidation, nothing to do with strong words. It was their attitude, enthusiasm, confidence, and belief. When you're on a listing presentation, do you have the attitude that you're going to get this contract signed? Are you excited? Are you presenting with enthusiasm? Do you have the confidence in your voice that this is what's best for them? And do you have the belief that you're the agent to help them? That's what it's about. So here's the thing, If you only have 3 of those 4 things, closing is going to be really hard. You got to have all 4. The attitude, A, that they're going to sign a contract when you meet with them. That's pretty simple, right? Or else, why else are you going? Enthusiasm. Look if you can't get excited about taking a listing and potentially making $10, $15, $20, $30,000, then I don't know, maybe customer service is better for you. The confidence that you believe that you can help them. The confidence in what you're saying. Well, if you've practiced the scripts, right? You know what to say and how to say it. You should have a ton of confidence and the belief that you're the best person for the job, which is really easy. having that belief that you're the best person for the job is really easy because we've all chosen an industry that promotes incompetence. Well, Robert, am I the best person for the job? Well, if they don't pick you, they have a 50% chance of picking someone that's never closed a deal and never will. So simply half of the agents in the real estate market are automatically worse than you. Just like that. And if you've ever closed more than 3 deals in a year, okay, which some of you haven't, some of you haven't, that's just fine. But if you've ever closed more than 3, then you're already better than 80% of the real estate agents in the field. So you should have a ton of belief that, my goodness, yes, I am the best agent, because if you don't work with me, the risk that you are posing to yourself is that you're going to go interview someone who has an active real estate license, but doesn't know what the hell they're doing. So yeah, it is vitally important that you list with me. Very easy to have that belief. And it's true. It's true. Are there expired listings? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. In Southern California, even in a changing market, it's really hard to have a listing expire. Even in a changing market, it's really hard to have a listing expire. You have to have a very unmotivated seller and an agent that doesn't have the confidence to confront. And yet there's expired listings all the time, canceled listings all the time, homes that are on the market for 90, 120, 150, 200 days, all the time. So Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do you prefer that? Are you willing to risk that? No? Good. Sign the contract. That's closing. You want to close it? You want a closing skill? Here's a closing skill, right? You could either list with this agent, where you're going to have a chance of expired, canceled, 200 days on market, or you can list with me. Which one do you prefer? Well, I'd rather list with you. Great, sign the contract. There's your closing skill. Happens all the time. Or my favorite one is the Kobe Bryant, right? You want first place, come with me. You want second place, go with somebody else. They asked that to Kobe about recruiting players, and he said, "What do you do to recruit players to come play for you?" And he says, "If you want to play for first place, come play with me. If you want to play for second place, go play somewhere else." I still think that's the best closing line there is, but we'll work on that. Okay, it's all about the belief. Okay, I wrote down here next: don't be afraid to be direct when asking for the order. Don't be afraid to be direct when asking for the order, or in this case, asking for the contract. Now, being direct does not mean you have to be hard, difficult, or anything along those lines. Okay? That's not what it's about. Let me ask you this. If I ask someone to sign the contract, would you sign the contract, please? Is that a direct? Am I being direct when I say that?
Yes.
Am I being rude?
No.
Am I being mean?
No.
No. But when we role play, some of you nail it and some of you do this. So I can get you what you want in the time that you want. Won't that be great? Yeah. Okay, sign the contract. And the voice goes down, and kind of head goes down with it, right? You know, so maybe if you're ready, potentially you can go ahead and sign the contract, but only if you're ready. It's not being direct, right? Would you sign the contract, please? That's direct, but that's okay.
You have me over here for a reason, right?
Yeah, you had me over here for a reason, right? That's direct. That's not mean. Okay. Can I tell you the main issue with selling it yourself? That's direct, but it's not mean. So when it comes to closing, you have to be more direct, but it doesn't mean being hard, difficult, or mean. Here's what it comes down to. I want you to write this down. This is very important. It's all about tonality. All about tonality. If I smile and nod my head and say, "Will you sign the contract, please?" That's very comforting. I'm just saying, sign the contract, please. Now, if I just go, "Great, so why don't you go ahead and sign the contract?" That's probably not going to go as well. Come on, sign. Let's go. Sign. Faster we get this listed, faster we get sold. Come on. That's being direct, but also being rude. Okay. And probably a little bit much, but it's about tonality, right? As Jason was said, I mean, you had me out here for a reason, right? I'm not being mean. It's a direct question as opposed to, well, gosh, you had me out here for a reason, right? Same words, different tonality, and a different message being received. So being direct is all about the tonality which you use. Now you can, here's the thing. The best way to solve any tonality problem is to smile when you say it. So if you want to be direct, but not seen as rude or difficult, smile when you say it. Will you sign the contract, please? I mean, you had me out here for a reason, right? Do you feel I can sell your home? See, those are direct questions, but I'm smiling when I'm saying them. So they're not coming across as mean or rude. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The power of smiling takes away the tonality problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jason says use hand gestures, right? Okay. You don't want to be a Nazi, essentially, right? Just standing straight up. Yeah. Good stuff. All right, I wrote down here next. Don't be afraid to smile and use humor to break the tension that takes place in a closing situation. Humor is magic in selling situations. Don't be afraid to smile and use humor to break the tension that takes place in a closing situation. Humor is magic in selling situations. So let's be honest. For sellers and buyers, closing is a very tense situation, right? I mean, if you're a buyer, you're entrusting someone to take their bank account, take your bank account and say, hey, I'm going to give you my bank account to help me go buy a house, knowing that my bank account's going to be empty at the end. That is stressful. Stress creates tension. I'm a seller. I've built up all this equity. I have a couple $100,000 here, and I'm entrusting you to protect it and negotiate on my behalf. That creates tension, right? So it's already a tense moment. So smiling breaks the tension and humor breaks the tension. Now, here's what's vitally important about humor. Number one, you are not a stand-up comedian. Okay? Humor to break tension is little subtle comments. It's not, so what's the deal with, okay, you're not Jerry Seinfeld up there, right? Okay, you're not Seinfeld, you're not Chris Rock, you're not any of those people, all right? So humor doesn't have to be a stand-up bit. I would also recommend that if you're going to use humor in any sort of situation, you practice it. Okay. When Mike Ferry's on stage, he has written in his notes when the joke is going to go in. It doesn't just come to him and go, oh, this would be a great time to tell this joke. It's in the notes. Tell Starbucks joke. Okay. Tell this joke. It's in the notes. And then he practices that delivery. So practice, this would be a good spot to add that joke. This would be a good spot to this. Let me give you an example in a real estate world. Hal Swayze. Hal Swayze, when he does the listing presentation, now this is not at the close, but this is part of the listing presentation, is when he talks about price. And he says, look, I'm not the one who determines the price on your home. The buyers are the ones that determine those price, those gosh darn buyers. Right? And then the seller kind of gives a little laugh, you know, because it's just that little subtle joke. Gosh darn buyers. Right? It's that little stuff to kind of break the tension. It's little laughs here and there, breaking a smile, things along those lines. So don't overdo it. Okay. Now, some people are very quick and can make a little joke, a little laugh to kind of break the tension and make things easy. Those of you who are gifted. Okay. Others may not be as gifted, so you got to try to plant those types of things. So humor is great, but I've seen humor fall sometimes because the joke doesn't land, or it's too much of a joke instead of a little subtle statement, or the timing is off, things like that. So practice that kind of stuff and make sure it's written in that script. Now, here's the thing. you only have to know a couple little moments to to break a smile and tell a joke, and you could do it the same one on every single listing presentation. So you don't have to come up with 365 jokes. Okay, you need one little humor. Oh, that's a good spot to do that one. But humor is really important to break the tension in a closing situation. Okay, you don't want a hostage negotiation. Okay, it's got to be fun. It's got to be light. Right, that's the power of closing. All right. I wrote down here next, be sure to close a minimum of 5 times, since 80% of sales take place after the 5th close. Be sure to close a minimum of 5 times, since 80% of sales take place after the 5th close. So let me ask you a question. At a listing presentation, when's your first opportunity to close?
1 minute.
At
The
the
1 minute,
beginning.
the 1 minute presentation, right?
Yes.
Do you absolutely have to sell your home? Do you want a price from a seller? Or do you want to keep it on the market for a long period of time? Do you want me to handle the sale for you? Great. All we need to do now is simply sign the contract so I can help you get what you want in the time that you want. Won't that be great? Sign the contract, please. 1 minute in, I've already closed once, assuming that the first 3 questions went the way I wanted. Now, sometimes that happens, but sometimes they go, oh, hold on. All right, but I got my first close in there. Now, my second close could come at any other time in the presentation, because I might go through the presentation and I might hear a little something like, nah, Robert, I mean, you're definitely the guy for us. Great. I'm not going to, one of 3 things can happen tonight. Number 1, you'll have the opportunity to list with me. Number 2, you'll decide not to list with me. Number 3, I'll decide not to take your listing. Any one of those is fine. Now, Robert, we're going to list with you. Great. All we need to do now is sign the contracts. Okay. Anytime I hear that, I'm closing. So there's number 2. And then you get to the end. Now, will you list your home with me for that price tonight? That's number 3. And then they give me an objection, which is, I want to think it over. Great. And I give them that objection, and then I handle it. And that's my number 4. But we also want to think about this. Great. There's number 5. So I'm going through this. The reason I'm going through this is because I think sometimes when people go, well, close 5 times, that means I'm going to get all the way to the end. And then what? I'm going to have to handle commission, and I'm going to have to handle, I got a friend in the business, and I got to, all these other, it's like, no, you might not have to handle 5 objections. That's not what I mean by close 5 times. I'm just saying there will probably be 5 opportunities within the whole presentation to close for a contract. And some people don't, after the first one, just say, oh, okay, well, no problem. Well, yeah, think it over and let me know. Man, don't do that. Don't be a callback agent.
Hey, Robert.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah, when you do a Zoom presentation, it's much easier to ask for the closing anytime because you are on the computer.
Yeah, it is. It is, absolutely. So close a minimum of 5 times. Okay. It's not that difficult. Not that difficult. Now, closing a minimum of 5 times requires you to, 1, pay attention, because you don't know when that closing moment will happen. They might say something that implements the closing. It also requires you to know the scripts, because you can't close on an objection if you don't know how to handle the objection. So it requires you to know that as well. And it requires you to be quick. You have to listen, you have to know the scripts, and you have to be quick. Okay, here's what I mean. If they give you a closing remark, like I mentioned earlier about, no, Robert, you're the guy, I got to be quick to go to it. I can't just, oh, okay, well, I guess now that you mentioned that, faster, be quick. Okay. All right, I wrote down here next. They expect you to close them. I'm sorry. They expect you to close to get a buyer to buy their house. So therefore, they would expect for you to close them the same way. The listing presentation, the closing of a listing presentation is really an audition. Because I'm going to pay you $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to negotiate on my behalf, to go find a buyer and get them to buy my house instead of somebody else's. Or if I'm representing a buyer, I'm going to work with you so that you're going to get me into a house. This is all an audition. So if you don't close strong, or you just kind of cower down, or you don't even try to close, they're looking at you going, how are you going to get me the best price for my home? How are you going to get my offer accepted against all these other offers? As the commission cutting script says, right? They don't even have the courage to stand up for their own worth. How are they going to stand up for the price we set on your home? Okay, so it's you're auditioning. They are expecting you to close. Okay, you're going there on a listing presentation. When they ask you to come over for a listing presentation, they're well aware this is a sales situation. You are coming over there to sell them. They are well aware of that. Well, Robert, I don't want to be pushy. Good, go to customer service. Okay, I'm going to write a book one day. And it's going to be called, I've been saying this for years. I'm going to do it one day. It's going to be like, if you don't want to sound salesy, don't go into sales. Okay. They are expecting you to close them. They're expecting you to sell them. That's part of the process. Okay. I wrote down here next, you have to believe in your own value as a salesperson to get the customer to believe in your value as a salesperson. As the value to the customer increases, the close becomes easier. For those of you that have ever been to a Mike Ferry seminar, he says this every time. Who's the best listing agent you know? You are supposed to say yourself. Okay. Now, I don't actively list property. So I say Hal Swayze. I said, and I told the story before, I went up to Hal one time after the event. I said, Hal, when Mike asked a question, I said, you. And he looked at me and said, it's just practice. Take that for what it's worth, right? But you have to believe in your own value as a salesperson to get the customer to believe in you as a salesperson. So for some of you, not all of you, okay, some of you, this isn't a problem, but go to the pre-qual. Some of you have a hard time asking question number 2. Are you planning to interview more than one agent for the job of selling your home? Some people have a hard time asking that question because what if they are? Who cares? I want to know if they are, and I want to know who it is. Gosh, what if they're interviewing, whoever the top person is in your marketplace? What if they're going to interview them? So what's your point? Like, who cares? But Karen Bernardi just moved from Boulder, Colorado into my marketplace, and they're going to interview her. Okay. I say this all the time. I've said this many times before. Mike always says on stage is that your worst nightmare would be if I decide to be a listing agent in your marketplace. You need to have the mentality to say, well, I don't know. Why don't you go get your license and let's find out? That needs to be your mentality. That's the mentality you need to have in order to persuade a customer to have faith in you that you can get their home sold or you can get them into escrow as a buyer. But if you have that mentality of like, oh my God, if Mike came into my market, I'm totally screwed. They're never going to have faith in you because they can sense that. Okay. You need to value yourself as a salesperson. Now, I'm telling you, everyone on here, right? All 46 of you, if any of you run to Mike Ferry and tell him that I said that comment, I will deny it. Okay, I'm letting all of you know that right now. I don't know. They're liars, Mike, all of them. Right? So there you go. All right, last couple points here. Last couple points. Okay. Create urgency when asking for the appointment and create additional urgency when asking to get a contract signed. Create urgency when asking for the appointment and create additional urgency when asking to get a contract signed. Create urgency when asking for the appointment. The value of meeting with me now. Call me back on Friday. Well, how about instead of calling you back, we just meet on Friday? Instead of me calling you at 6 o'clock on Friday, I'll just be there. Eliminate the follow-up call. Let's get together today. Create the additional urgency when you're getting the contract signed. Here's the value of getting the contract signed today. Well, we're thinking about doing this in a couple of weeks. What can I explain to you why this may be beneficial to get this done today? Right? It's all about creating that urgency. Now, right now, the urgency is that in some markets, the prices are changing a little bit. So there's some urgency. Might be urgency of the timing of the year. It might be urgency in how soon they want to get to their next place. Well, how soon do you have to be in Boston? Well, we got to be in Boston by October 1st. Well, if you got to be in Boston by October 1st, let's work backwards. That means we have to have this house, sold by the end of September, which means it has to be on the market it has to be in escrow by the end of August, which means it has to be on the market the beginning of August, which is right now. So if you need to be in Boston by October 1st, we need to get this contract signed today so I can get it on the market tomorrow. I'm creating that urgency. Does that make sense? Do you see how this kind of works? Was I rude in anything that I just said?
Interest rates could be urgency too, right?
Interest rates are urgency, sure. Interest rates are expected to go up. Can I explain to you how that's going to affect the number of buyers on your home? Yeah, you're absolutely right, dude. Good point. Okay. Now, there's a difference. This is vitally important. It's going to be the last point we're going to talk about. There's a difference between creating urgency and pressure selling. Okay. There's a difference between urgency and scare tactics. Vitally important that you understand that difference. Urgency is, as Duke said, the interest rates are going up. Can I explain to you how that could affect you as a seller? Can I explain to you how that's going to affect you as a buyer? There's a real effect to that. Urgency is you need to be in this place by this time, which means that if we work backwards, you need to have it listed by this time. So we need to get this going. That's urgency. I'm creating urgency. I'm creating urgency that the prices in your market are going down a little bit. So we need to get this listed so we're not going any lower. That's urgency. There's a difference between that and pressure selling. Like, come on. We got to do this today. We got to do this today. If you don't do this today, you're going to regret it. Okay. We got to get this signed today. Come on, let's go. Get it signed today. That's pressure selling. That's intimidating selling. If you don't do this today, man, I'm telling you, it's going to cost you a fortune. That's scare tactics. That doesn't work. So it's the difference between urgency and versus pressure selling or scare tactics. That makes sense? Okay, important that you understand that.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Questions on the closing skills and topics that we went over today? No? Okay, very good. Well, hopefully there was one or two things in there that were helpful in terms of closing skills. But remember, going back to the very beginning, if you didn't hear anything else I said, which some of you, that's true. The very beginning. The close is a natural ending to a great presentation. So if you want to be a great closer, start by being a great presenter. That will make the closing easier. Very good. All right, everybody. It's 1 o'clock on the dot.